All right, so let's dive right in. We've got this fascinating proposal in front of us, and I'm really curious to hear your take on it. It's all about bringing Emistrail, that German rail company, to Kingasani.
Oh yeah, this one caught my eye too. Kingasani, for those who might not be familiar, it's a district in Kinshasa, DRC.
Right, and on the surface, it looks like just another infrastructure project, new trains, maybe some jobs.
Uh-huh, but that's where you'd be wrong. This thing goes way deeper.
Okay, color me intrigued. What's got you so hooked?
Well, for starters, look at this petition they've got going. The community is aiming for a whopping 5,000 signatures to show the government how serious they are about this.
5 million. Wow, that's a powerful statement. They're not just waiting around for development to happen, they're making it happen.
That's what I love about this. It's community-driven, bottom-up development. They're not just saying, hey, we need some help here. It's more like, this is our vision and we're ready to work for it.
I see what you mean. So it's not MS Trail coming in and saying, we're going to build you a railway. It's more like they're responding to a need, a desire that's already bubbling up within the community.
And that's huge because it means there's already this buy-in from the people who will actually benefit from it. They're not just passive recipients, they're active participants right from the start.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about ownership, right? It's about giving people a stake in their own future.
Exactly, and MS Trail seems to get that. Their vision aligns with what Kingasani residents already see for themselves. It's not just about shiny new trains, it's about using rail to unlock the economic potential they know is there.
Okay, so they've got the passion, the vision, and the community on board. But can this actually work? Kingasani isn't exactly a global trade hub at the moment.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? But that's also where the strategic thinking comes in.
Ooh, tell me more.
Okay, so first things first, Kingasani's location. It's right next to Njili Airport, one of the busiest in Africa.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's a gateway to the DRC and even beyond.
Right, and if you look at successful transport hubs around the world, so many of them started from similar, almost unassuming beginnings. What MS Rail is proposing is to leverage that existing airport connection and create a ripple effect outward.
I'm starting to see how this could work. So it's about creating this integrated transportation network using the airport as a springboard.
Exactly. They're talking about a four-phase plan. First, establish a strong headquarters in Kingasani, then expand to national rail networks.
So connecting Kingasani to the rest of the DRC, ambitious.
And it doesn't stop there. Phase 3 is about linking up with regional networks. Think, rail lines stretching across Africa.
Wow, that's a bold vision. And I got to ask, what kind of impact are we talking about here? The document mentions some pretty impressive numbers, like creating over 136,000 jobs and adding $450 million annually to the GDP.
Oh yeah, they definitely don't shy away from the big numbers, do they? And there's always a bit of, well, let's call it optimism in these projections.
All right, got to take it with a grain of salt.
Absolutely. But to be fair to them, they do break down the types of jobs created. It's not just construction, though that'll be a big initial wave for sure.
Makes sense. You need a lot of hands to build a railway.
Exactly. But then you've got management roles, logistics, and then think about all the local businesses that will pop up around this massive project.
Oh yeah, the ripple effect.
Exactly. Restaurants to feed all the workers, shops selling supplies, transportation services to get people around. The list goes on. It creates this whole ecosystem.
That's what I always find so fascinating about these large-scale projects. It's not just about the direct impact. It's about how those ripples spread out and touch so many different aspects of life.
Oh, totally. And it's those ripples that often have the most lasting impact.
All right, so big numbers, ripple effects. It's easy to get caught up in the excitement. But let's bring it back down to earth for a second. How does this actually translate into benefits for the average person in Kingasani?
That's the question, right? It's all well and good to talk about GDP and job creation, but what does it mean for someone living in Kingasani right now?
Right, what's in it for them?
Well, imagine you're a young person in Kingasani. Job prospects are limited, opportunities for advancement even more so.
Yeah, not exactly a place overflowing with opportunity.
That's where this project gets really interesting. They specifically emphasize youth, offering technical training and apprenticeships alongside those construction jobs. It's not just a paycheck, it's a chance to build a career in a growing industry.
That's a huge point. It's not just about handing out jobs, it's about equipping people to thrive long term.
Yeah.
And that's what creates lasting change.
Exactly. It breaks the cycle of poverty, gives people a real shot at a better future.
I like that. So we've got jobs, we've got training, but what about the basics? Things like transportation, electricity, water. Are those factored into this plan?
Oh, absolutely. They highlight those pretty prominently. Reliable infrastructure is key to attracting businesses and improving quality of life.
Right. You can't have a thriving economy without the basics in place.
They're planning improvements to transportation networks, integrating sustainable energy solutions, even upgrading water systems. It's a pretty holistic approach to development, which I have to say is encouraging.
Okay, so they're trying to cover all the bases. But this ISS, a massive construction project. And I think we'd be remiss not to talk about the environmental impact.
Yeah, you can't just gloss over that, can you? Big infrastructure often comes at a cost to the environment. That's just the reality.
It's that balance, right?
Yeah.
Development versus preservation.
Exactly. But here's the thing. MS Trail is really emphasizing eco-friendly practices. They're talking about reduced carbon emissions, renewable energy sources, responsible waste management, the whole 9 yards.
So at least on paper, they're saying the right things.
They are, which is a good starting point. But as they say, the proof will be in the pudding. How they implement these practices on the ground will be crucial. And that's something we might want to look into further as we dig deeper.
Absolutely. Words are one thing, actions are another. We'll definitely keep that in mind. You mentioned local businesses earlier. How exactly do they fit into this grand plan?
Oh, that's where things get really interesting. MS Trail isn't just parachuting in, they're talking about building a local supply chain.
I'm all ears.
Think of it as a two-way street. MS Trail needs materials, expertise, all sorts of things to get this project off the ground. And Kingasani residents can provide those things.
So it's a chance for local businesses to get involved, to actually benefit from this project.
Exactly. It's a win-win situation. And they're not just talking about handing out contracts, they're talking about partnerships.
So not just a quick buck, but a real opportunity to grow and develop alongside this multinational company.
Precisely. The document even mentions mentorship programs, access to resources, all sorts of things to help local businesses scale up and meet the demands of this project.
Okay, now that's what I like to hear. So we've got a sense of the vision, the potential benefits, and some of the big questions that need answers. But before we go any further, let's talk about the timeline. How does this thing actually unfold?
All right, so buckle up because they're aiming for a 24-month rollout, which for a project of this magnitude is, well, ambitious to say the least.
24 months. That's a tight schedule.
Right.
All right, break it down for me. What are the key phases?
First up, it's all about laying the groundwork. 3 months dedicated to site assessment and acquisition.
Ah, the due diligence phase.
Exactly. They're making sure the land is suitable, the legal framework is in place, all that good stuff. Then comes the heavy lifting. A full year dedicated to infrastructure development. This is where those transportation improvements, energy solutions, and of course the MS Rail headquarters itself will take shape.
A year for all of that. That's a tight schedule.
It is, but that's the goal. Then, once the building is done, we move into 6 months of operational preparation.
So getting everything ready to go, staffing up, figuring out the logistics.
Exactly. All the behind-the-scenes work to make sure the machine runs smoothly. And finally, the grand finale. A 3-month launch phase with the headquarters opening its doors and operations officially beginning.
Okay, so a lot can happen in 24 months. But they're not just focused on the finish line, are they? We talked about that 5 million signature petition. It's pretty clear they want people involved every step of the way.
Oh, absolutely. And they've laid out some interesting ways to keep that community engagement going strong. They're planning celebrations tied to reaching certain signature milestones, things like welcome shows, presentations about jobs and training.
So making it a community event, building excitement along the way.
Exactly. And there's talk of even setting up mobile clinics as part of these celebrations.
Oh, wow, that's going above and beyond. But it's not just about parties, right? What about giving people a real voice in how this project unfolds?
Right, that's essential. They're planning public forums to discuss the project's benefits, address any concerns people might have. They're talking about volunteer opportunities for people who want to get directly involved. And they're planning educational workshops to help people develop the skills they'll need to succeed in this new economy MS Rail is hoping to create.
Wow, so it's about information, participation, and empowerment. They're really trying to cover all the bases.
They are, which is commendable, but the real test will be in the execution. How do they ensure these initiatives are genuinely inclusive, responsive to the community's needs? That's something worth exploring further.
Couldn't agree more. It's one thing to have a plan. It's another to make it a reality. And that's where the real deep dive begins.
Right. We've got the overview, but now we need to scrutinize the details, peel back the layers.
And it's exactly what we're going to do.
So we've laid out this grand vision, this roadmap to a brighter future for Kingasani. But let's be real for a second. We're talking about the DRC here. It's a country with, well, let's just say a complicated history.
Right. It's not exactly known for its smooth sailing development projects.
Exactly. So while this MSTrail proposal is exciting, we can't just take it at face value. We need to get into the weeds a bit, poke around, see where the potential pitfalls might be lurking.
Okay, I like where this is going. Play devil's advocate for me. What are the things that make you raise an eyebrow?
Well, for starters, let's talk about infrastructure. The document keeps mentioning upgrades to transportation networks, power grids, you name it. But those are massive undertakings, especially in the DRC.
Yeah, the existing infrastructure isn't exactly top-notch, is it?
Let's just say it's seen better days. So even if MSTrail has the best intentions, can they realistically revamp all of that within their proposed timeframe? I'm not so sure.
That's a good point. And even if they somehow pull it off, what about the environmental cost of all that construction? They talk a big game about sustainability, but how do you balance that with the sheer scale of what they're proposing?
Right, that's the big question, isn't it? It's easy to talk about renewable energy and responsible waste management, but putting those principles into practice in a place like the DRC, that's a whole other ballgame.
It requires a level of, I don't know, rigor and oversight that we haven't always seen in these types of projects.
Exactly. And frankly, a level of transparency that's not always a given in these situations.
Transparency is crucial, especially when you're dealing with potential environmental risks. The people of Kingasani deserve to know what impact this project will have on their community, good, bad, or indifferent.
Absolutely. And it's not just about the physical environment, right? It's about the social and economic landscape as well. We keep hearing about all these jobs, but are those jobs going to be accessible to everyone in Kingasani? Are there programs in place to ensure people have the skills they need to fill those roles?
Yeah, and what about those who might be displaced by the construction itself? We can't just assume everyone will automatically benefit from this.
Exactly. There needs to be a plan in place to ensure the benefits are distributed fairly and that no one gets left behind.
A plan that addresses those potential negative impacts and provides support for those who might be adversely affected.
And that's where the community engagement piece becomes absolutely crucial. It's not enough to just hold a couple of town hall meetings and call it a day. There needs to be an ongoing dialogue between MSTrail, local leaders, and residents throughout the entire process.
A dialogue where concerns are heard, questions are answered, and solutions are developed collaboratively. It's about making sure the people of Kingasani have a real say in shaping their own future.
Precisely. And that includes thinking critically about how local businesses can truly benefit from this project. They talk about integrating them into the supply chain, which sounds great, but what kind of support will those businesses need to actually make that happen?
Right. Will they have access to the resources and training necessary to compete on a level playing field with bigger players?
Those are the questions that need to be addressed. It's one thing to offer opportunities. It's another to make sure those opportunities are accessible and lead to something sustainable.
So to recap, we've identified some potential challenges. Infrastructure limitations, environmental concerns, ensuring equitable access to opportunities, and making sure local businesses are genuinely integrated into the project. Those are some pretty big hurdles. Where do we go from here?
Well, first and foremost, MSTrail needs to do their homework. They need to go beyond just the technical aspects and conduct a thorough needs assessment, in collaboration with local stakeholders.
So not just crunching numbers, but actually getting out there, talking to people, understanding the context, the nuances of the community.
Exactly. It's about gathering data, yes, but it's also about listening to the stories, the hopes, and the fears of the people who will be most affected by this project.
It's about building trust and demonstrating that they're being heard, that their voices matter.
Right. And when it comes to environmental concerns, transparency is paramount. MSTrail needs to be upfront about the potential risks, conduct those rigorous environmental impact assessments we talked about, and make those findings publicly available. No hiding behind technical jargon, no burying the inconvenient truths.
Maybe they could even go a step further and involve community members in the monitoring process. Give them the tools and the knowledge to hold MSTrail accountable and ensure the project adheres to the highest environmental standards.
No, that's an interesting idea. It's about empowering the community to be active participants in protecting their own environment. It's about shifting the power dynamic from we're doing this to you to we're doing this with you.
I like that. So we've talked about addressing the environmental piece, but what about those concerns about workforce readiness and equitable access to opportunities? How do we make sure everyone benefits?
Well, one promising avenue would be to partner with local institutions. Educational institutions, vocational training centers. MS Terrell could work with them to develop tailored programs that align with the skills needed for those jobs the project will create.
Right. So it's not just about creating jobs, it's about creating a pipeline of qualified individuals who can actually fill those jobs.
And maybe even go a step further and offer apprenticeships or internships, give people hands-on experience, a real taste of what it's like to work in this industry.
I like that. It's about providing a pathway, not just a destination. And what about those local businesses? How do we make sure they're not just token participants, but truly integrated into this whole project?
Well, MS Terrell could establish a dedicated business development program. Think mentorship opportunities, connections to potential investors, guidance on navigating the complexities of joining a large-scale supply chain.
It's about creating an environment where those businesses can thrive, not just survive. It's about making sure the economic benefits of this project are felt throughout the community, not just concentrated at the top.
Exactly. It's about sharing the prosperity.
And, we talked earlier about those public forums. Those could be turned into valuable platforms for addressing these very challenges and brainstorming solutions collaboratively.
Turn them into genuine spaces for dialogue where MS Trail, local leaders, community members, and business owners can come together and figure out a path forward that benefits everyone.
And maybe even consider forming some ongoing advisory committees that provide input and feedback throughout the project's life cycle. That would show a real commitment to listening to and learning from the community.
It's about shifting the power dynamic, moving away from a top-down approach to something that's truly collaborative and community-driven. And as we're talking about all of this, it strikes me that this project has the potential to be so much more than just a railway.
I'm with you on that. It's an opportunity to redefine what development looks like, not just in the DRC, but potentially in other parts of the world as well.
It's a chance to show that economic growth and social progress can go hand in hand, that you don't have to sacrifice one for the other.
It's about building something that's truly transformative, something that benefits not just MS Trail, but the people of Kingasani and the DRC as a whole. It's a powerful vision, isn't it? But, as much as I love getting swept up in the possibilities, I also have to keep my feet on the ground. We have to be realistic.
Right, I hear you. It's easy to get carried away with the what ifs and the imagine that.
Because there will be hurdles, there will be setbacks. That's just the nature of any project this ambitious, especially in a place like the DRC.
Yeah, it's not exactly known for its predictability.
Exactly. So how do we keep the hope alive while also acknowledging the very real challenges that lie ahead?
That's the balancing act, isn't it? For me, it's about remembering who's driving this whole thing.
The community.
Exactly. The energy, the determination. I mean, they're not just sitting around waiting for someone to save them. They're taking charge. They're making things happen. And that, to me, is the most powerful antidote to cynicism.
I love that. It's about agency, right? It's about recognizing that people are capable of solving their own problems given the right tools and opportunities.
It's about shifting the narrative from one of dependence to one of empowerment.
And if MS Trail can tap into that energy, that community ownership, if they're truly willing to listen and adapt, then this project has the potential to be truly transformative.
It could set a new precedent for how development is done, not just in the DRC, but maybe even beyond.
It could show the world that sustainable, inclusive, community-driven development is not just a pipe dream, it's a possibility.
And a powerful one at that.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm curious, what's your biggest takeaway from all of this?
It might sound cheesy, but for me, it really is the power of hope. It would be so easy to be cynical, to point to all the reasons why this might fail. And trust me, I can come up with a long list.
Oh, I bet you can.
But then I remember the faces of those people, their determination, their belief in a better future. And it's hard not to feel a glimmer of optimism.
It's a reminder that change is possible, even in the most unexpected places.
And that it's often driven by ordinary people doing extraordinary things.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Mm.
So what can our listeners do, those who are inspired by this story, to stay engaged with this project as it moves forward?
Well, first and foremost, keep an eye on that petition. It's a simple but powerful way to show solidarity with the community.
Right, strength in numbers.
Exactly. And stay informed.
Yeah.
Follow Emistrail's activities in Kingasani, look for opportunities to provide feedback, ask tough questions, hold their feet to the fire.
And for those who want to go even further, maybe explore ways to support local organizations on the ground, those who are working to empower communities and promote sustainable development in the DRC.
There are so many ways to get involved to make a difference.
So there you have it, our deep dive into Emistrail's ambitious plan for Kingasani. We've explored the potential benefits, the challenges, and the incredible power of community-driven development. And that's what I hope you'll take away from this conversation. This isn't just a story about a railway, it's a story about people, about hope, about the possibility of creating a better future together. So stay tuned for updates, keep asking those tough questions, and never underestimate the power of a community with a vision.